Today's session of reflection for Angelus Regina Cheli, where we are looking and we are trying to understand so that we can grow in a Christian faith by getting closer to Him and bringing the things we expected to do. For some time now, we have been looking at the commandment. Yesterday, we looked at the second commandment, which calls us not to take the name of the Lord in vain. You bring upon yourself condemnation, you bring upon yourself distractions, and we should keep holy Lord's name. You should not lie falsely with this. You should not swear with the name of God. When you love something, you revere something, you show so much respect and all that. So it is important that since you and I revere the name of the Lord, we should keep. Today we continue our discussion by looking at the third commandment. Third commandment. Remember to keep holy the Lord's day. Remember to keep holy the Lord's day. Beloved, I read from Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 to 11. Remember to keep holy the Sabbath day. 6 days you may labor and do all work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath. No work may be done, neither by you or your son or daughter or your male or female slave, your beast, or by the alien who lives with you. In 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, but on the seventh day he rested. That is why the Lord has blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. That is why the Lord has blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Beloved, few things come into mind when you reflect through the third commandment. Is God telling us we should only worship Him one day? Is God asking us all to worship Him just a particular day? Teaching us to do. One of the important things is this: keeping the day holy. Keeping the day as the Lord has told us to do. Three things are important for us to understand. Before doing so, I want to share with you few quotations from the New Testament. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 17. 2 Corinthians 5:17. Any man who comes to Christ has become a new creature. The old things are gone and new things come up. So when you come into Christ, when you accept Christ to be your personal Savior, the old things pass away and the new things come our way. Again, when you go to read John chapter 4, when you reflect on 19, going, the woman said to him, Sir, I can see that you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you people say that the place to worship is in Jerusalem. Jesus said to her, Believe me, woman, there is coming when you will worship the Father, neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You people worship what you do not understand, but we worship what we understand, because salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming, and is now here, when true worshippers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. We worship the Father in spirit and in truth. Beloved, now let's go deeper. Let's have these quotations at the back of our minds as we go deeper into this sacrament. Now, the first thing we need to understand, the Sabbath means a break for rest. Break for rest. So when you look at the meaning for Sabbath, it's a break for rest. So you break to rest. After working some days now, you take some break to rest. So the Jewish day of rest commemorating the seventh day of creation. So the Jewish day of rest, which talks about the seventh day we should rest. We see this in creation. And it's moved on and it became where a time people began worshiping also as well. So the Sabbath in all, we're talking about a rest, where the rest, you must keep the rest holy and all that. Three things are important from what I read from Exodus chapter 20, verse 8 following, three things come to mind. One, Sabbath recalls in the first place the seventh day of creation. So when God rested and was refreshed. So Exodus chapter 31 verse 17 speaks to this. So first time the Sabbath was mentioned was the God himself created. After God himself having created all things, he rested on the seventh day. So this, so to speak, authorized all men to interrupt their work and then have some rest. So it's important that when you work, it's important that you rest. So from the first understanding, man is encouraged to rest, to have some rest after all that he does. After all the work, we need to rest. It's very important. So we need to at times replenish our energies. We need to also come strong and refill. So rest is important. So you need to break and rest. So even slaves were supposed to be allowed to observe the Sabbath. So we should know that even slaves were even allowed to also observe the Sabbath as well. So again, too, this records the second great commemorative sign. So the liberation of Israel from slavery in Egypt. So the Sabbath also records, brings into mind when the Israelites were set free from slavery in Egypt, when they allowed them to go. So it brings into mind. So this is commemorated in the Passover. So you shall remember that you yourself were a servant in the land of Egypt. So if they were to allow their slaves to observe the Sabbath, they remember that the Sabbath, they themselves had been slaves before in a foreign land. So as they celebrated the Sabbath, they were also trying very much also to remember their own selves when they were freed from slavery. So you shall remember that you yourself were a servant in the land of Egypt. When you read Deuteronomy chapter 5:15, you come to understand this. So the Sabbath, therefore, a feast of human freedom. So the Sabbath gives freedom. So a feast of human freedom. So on the Sabbath, all breathe freely. So we are taking fresh air, all is allowed. So on it, the division of the world into masters and slaves is abolished. So where in the Sabbath system, where we abolish. So in this day of freedom and rest is also a sort of the world to come. It's a foretaste for the world to come. So the Judaism, the Jews and all that, and the people of Israel from the beginning, they observe this Sabbath day by resting and by giving honor to God. It started from the evening of Friday to the evening of Saturday. So when you go through the holy books, it begins from the evening of Friday to the evening of Saturday. So this is the period where the Sabbath will last. Beloved, going deeper, is God saying that we should only have a day to worship Him, to come together and worship? Yes, people have the mindset that God said we should commemorate once a while, every once a week and worship. Is that the case? Because the passage I read in the New Testament, according to John chapter 4, verse 16 going, a moment is coming where we shall worship in spirit and in truth. So that spirit and truth where we worship God freely at all times, at all moments. So to understand the Sabbath, yes, the Sabbath was given to man, but man was made free at the Sabbath day, because to rest, to set other people free and all that, we had the liberation to worship. And so it's basically went in for the Jews who have this day as the day to worship. So the Lord said we should commemorate the Sabbath. Beloved, looking at the Sabbath, the timing, the dates and all that, whether Saturday or that, beloved, the important thing is that you observe the days which you set aside to worship the Lord. People are of the argument that, people are of the view that it's only the Sabbath day you will worship. But God says a time is coming, we shall worship at the moment in spirit and in truth. Again, 2 Corinthians says that new things we become when we come into Christ. So we need to understand this. Now, most of the question now has to do with Sunday and then maybe Saturday, whatever it is. Beloved, the Sabbath itself wasn't only tied to a particular day. There were days or some moments in the year where they could move the Sabbath to either the 8th day or the first day as well. So it wasn't only a feast day that we only needed to have days to worship. Even the sign of days where we have Monday, Tuesdays, after the 100 1,000 years to come, then man sat down to give these days to equate these things to the calendar as we have. But so which day were they worshiping? Nobody knows. Which day were they engaging the Lord? Nobody. But the Lord said that on the 7th day they should rest. But aside that also, it wasn't tied to a particular day. When you read Leviticus chapter 23, verse 7, when you read Leviticus chapter 23, verse 16, these two quotations also makes us understand that there were instances where the Sabbath itself, the celebration, was moved to another day, whether when they were celebrating their yearly thing or whatever it is. The same ritual as it was done for rituals were observed also for the other days and be observed. It could be moved to different day aside what we have now as Saturday. So if you talk about Saturday and all that. So Leviticus chapter 23 reads. So the 8th day, it talks about the 8th day. So when you read Leviticus chapter 23, where I want you and I to follow and to become clear with it, 23 reads, verse 7 has this to tell us. Then, when the sun set, he again, on the first of these days you shall hold a sacred assembly, and do no sort of work. On each of the 7 days you shall offer an oblation to the Lord. Then on the 7th day you shall again hold a sacred assembly, and do no sort of work. So God himself gave them that as you observe on the 7th day, do same on the first day also. So the first day for day. So it's not easy even ties really to that. There were some days they could move the Sabbath to a different day where they can celebrate as they do, and again on the 7th day what they have as yearly whatever they want to explain. But God gave instances, the Holy Book gives instances where the Sabbath was moved or celebrated. Now, if we decide to worship on a different day, are we wrong to do so? Remember, God says that we shall worship in spirit and in truth. And remember, Jesus comes to fulfill, to do new things. So why Christians worshiping? Now, the point of departure is this: the Jewish worship God. The Jewish people, the Israelites, only know God. The Israelites do not know Christ. So things about Christianity, Christ and all that, they don't have it. Now the point of departure is this. So after some time, we came to realize what we call the Lord's Day. The Lord's Day is believed to be a day where Jesus Christ, whom we Christians follow, resurrected. So if Christ resurrected and fulfills what he promised, that yes, again, and he fulfilled this and resurrected on the 3rd day, which for us the first day and that Sunday, and in that respect we give our worship, we worship because we follow Christ. And there were instances where Christ himself had issues with the Sabbath in order. Remember, the Sabbath I've told you were moments where they set prisoners free and all that, slaves free, and then they allowed them to enjoy. But what was happening? So the Lord himself, Jesus in Christ, at a point in time, will come to say that yes, I have come. I am the master of the Sabbath. I am the Lord of the Sabbath. So there were moments where Jesus himself even didn't follow strictly what the Jewish people were doing, though he once a while frequently entered there. So the Lord's Day came about when we celebrate the resurrection of the Lord. So when we read Revelation chapter 1 verse 10, Revelation chapter 1 verse 10, so John makes references to the Lord's Day, which proves that the focus shifted from the 7th day to the 8th day. So to the 7th day to the 8th day. So you have seen that the Sabbath, they could move it to the first day, whatever. Different days or the per calendar, it could become the 8th day. So after the resurrection, the movement is shifted a little bit, because there were times the Jews will go inside there and they will break bread, and during they will go to the synagogue and they will come and break bread on Sunday as well. On the Lord's Day, they were breaking bread, and there were instances to show that. So when we read Revelation chapter 1 verse 10, we hear of the Lord's Day, and the Lord's Day being the day where Jesus Christ himself resurrected. Now when you read Acts chapter 20 verse 7, there's mention of the Lord to break bread. So the earliest believers went to the Jewish temple on the 7th day, but they gathered as Christians on the next day. Remember, they were Christians, followers of Christ. Now today, the Jews have the Sabbath because they don't know Christ, and they don't know the New Testament. But we are New Testament people, where we see what the Old Testament comes to light in the New Testament, and because Christ resurrected, we have the Sunday to be a day where we worship God. Even that notwithstanding, remember, we worship in spirit and in truth. Every day, every moment, we are worshiping. So even for Carry Church, every day there is church, every day there is church, every day we worship. So is it that God is saying that we want to worship too much, we sin, or it's wrong to worship so much? No. Is it that we say in a kind of I'm not saying quite, I'm not saying quite, I'm on pew. So too much of everything, is he saying that too much of fish in the soup makes the soup bad? No, it doesn't happen so. But rather it makes our connection with God become so great. So there were instances where even the people, the early church, were gathering on Sunday, the 8th day, to also worship and to break bread as well. Now Galatians chapter 4, verse 10. Paul exhorts his people, you people, you have made me work in vain. Why are you still following days, seasons, months, and all that? They were following the Jewish custom. Now Christ is risen. I have preached Christ to you. Things have become new because now we worship Him. Because when I gave you that quotation, 2 Corinthians chapter 5:7 says that when anybody comes to Christ, he has become a new creature. Or the old things are gone. So in Christ, new things come up by fulfilling the Old Testament. So Paul speaks to people, you have made me work in vain in Galatians chapter 4. Because you are observing days, months, seasons, and years. I'm afraid of your account. Perhaps I have labored in vain. Because he saw that people were not still listening. They were still clinging to the Jewish custom. Beloved, Christians are not Jews. Remember, I read to you that yes, he says that yes, salvation comes from the Jews. By a time is coming, things are going to change. And the Jews up to this time now, some of the majority, they don't have Christian worship. Or let me say, they are Jewish cults, they worship like Jews. For instance, we have traditionalists, we have Muslims, as they all worship. That's what the Jews are. So they also have the days of worship. Though it's salvation is believed to have come from, according to John chapter 2, verse 16 following. But remember that Christ came in to fulfill all this time. So if somebody worships on a different days, which we associate to be Sunday, Monday, and all that. So somebody worships on a different day, is the person wrong? The person is giving the honor. He is hallowing the day. He is keeping the Sabbath. So what does it mean to keep the Sabbath holy? Before we enter there, what did Jesus himself react to the Sabbath? Remember, he is God. Remember, he is the Lord of Sabbath. So Jesus himself, going through Matthew chapter 12, verse 1 to 12, the Pharisees object to the disciples breaking the Sabbath, but Jesus corrected them. I said to you, something greater than the temple is here. The Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. So the Lord is linking the Jewish Sabbath to the temple. Remember, when I read even John chapter 4:16, we hear that they were referring to the fact that they should worship in Jerusalem only. So if you are talking about the Sabbath, then we all need to come together and to worship in Jerusalem. So that is why even the Jews believe that for all to have true worship is to be done in Jerusalem. But Jesus says that a time is coming. It's not about days. It's not about movement. It's not about place. It's not about mountain. It's not about Jerusalem. But we worship in spirit and truth. So Jesus even proclaimed that he himself is the Lord of the Sabbath. So by dealing with them, Jesus, though he went in there, but he made them understand that the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. So Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. So the fact that Jesus claims the right to heal on the Sabbath and to interpret the Sabbath laws mercifully poses a dilemma for his Jewish contemporaries. Either Jesus the Messiah sent by God, which makes him the Lord even of the Sabbath, Mark chapter 2, verse 28, or else he is merely a man, in which case his actions on the Sabbath are sin against the law. For them, they suppose that it's a sin against the law. So going deeper, so the Pharisees again, Luke chapter 6, verse 1 to 11, they came to him and they complained again. But Jesus replied, the Son of Man is the Lord of Sabbath. So he's the Lord over the Sabbath. Now, John chapter 5, verse 9 to 18. The Jews began to persecute Jesus because he did this on Sabbath. So for healing, for saving, for redeeming, they were killing. But meanwhile, the Sabbath was a moment where even slaves were allowed to work. And that is why Jesus will condemn them in Luke chapter 13 and all that, when they even untied their oxen and they even took care of animals more than man. So the Jews in the New Testament will even take care of animals on the Sabbath day and leave man behind. How can this be? So if you have dedicated the day of being Sunday to the worship of the Lord, then we need to keep the day as such. We need to observe as it's observed at all times. It should be kept in a way where we give glory and honor to God. So Christians replace the celebration of the Sabbath, or because Jesus resurrected, because it's the Lord's day, because we follow Christ and we believe that by his resurrection, whatever he said has been fulfilled, then Sunday became the obvious day for the worship of Christians as well. So Jesus Christ rose from the dead on a Sunday, and that's the Lord's day. And so, however, it includes some elements of the Sabbath where we need to also remember not to work, to set that time aside and to pray and to rest as well. It's very important that we do so. So it includes the element like one, this festive splendor of God's goodness, where God has been so good to us by creating us. We need to appreciate it. It records the 8th day of creation, where God himself rested by making a prayer and blessing the day holy. So this day we celebrate in the Easter Vigil. You have wonderfully created man, every month wonderfully restored him. We celebrate it. Third, it includes the theme of rest, not only to sanctify but also to rest as well. It's very important. So how do we break the Sabbath laws? So Jesus himself often would not even mind much about the Sabbath, but would do things which are needful, things which are very important, things which goes out there to save mankind. Nobody commits sin when a person worships in on Sunday and whatever. We don't offend, we don't commit sin anywhere. No, but when they don't keep the day holy as such, that's the problem. How do we keep the days holy? There are certain things we need to keep into mind, bring into mind. There are very things we should know that we need to bring into mind and focus into this moment. So the Sabbath day, nobody else. God loves that we worship him at all times. Every place where you find yourself. Jews have their day to be whatever Saturday, starting from Friday evening and on Saturday evening, where they wouldn't do all that, where they want to go in and whatever. But we Christians, we have the Sunday as the Lord's day, where you also observe the elements of prayer, rest, and also even making sure that those who are with us are not working. So how do we break, or how do we make this commandment realized in our life? One, do you often, if you attend mass often early as possible on Sunday, how do we keep this Sabbath day holy? This Sunday, how do you keep it holy? By attending mass often as possible. Do you attend mass? Do you go to church on Sunday as early enough or not? Or you always choose to stay at home? So do you observe the days of obligations where you need to attend mass, to go to church? When you come to church, what do? Do you come there to laugh? Do you come to church to always play on your phones, to WhatsApp and all those things? Are you doing those things on a Sabbath day, on a Sunday, the Lord's day? Is that the things you are doing where you are Instagramming, Twittering, where you are WhatsApping and all that? You are not keeping the Sabbath day holy. Do you come and converse and talk and chat and talk about people? Breaking the Sabbath day, they need to keep the concern. Now it has become normal for us. People turn in to only sell. If they are selling, they want to sell for some time, and then quickly they will come and then worship God. No, this day must be kept holy for the Lord. Beloved, it's very important. If you know the some of these things, there's a blessing. I will share with you a nice passage, a nice sharing on it before I end. So, do you often encourage those who are with you, your children? Do you take them to church? Are you all the time at mass with them? Do you encourage them to be at catechesis where they will learn about Christ? Or with those who are working for you, do you ask them to work for you whilst you are in church? You are not keeping the Sabbath day holy. You're not keeping the Lord's Day holy. So when you have people working for you, you don't have to. You come to church and you leave them behind. There are some people, I'm church. When you finish, wash the things. When you go to farm and harvest some cassava, come and plant for me. When I come and eat, you don't ensure people under your care to even observe this day. Meanwhile, the Israelites, in the beginning, they were asked to allow even slaves to enjoy some kind of freedom. If you are doing the same by not allowing people under you to go to church, by not encouraging them, by not taking them to church, you are committing sin. You are keeping the Lord's Day holy. So, beloved, in a nutshell, I want us to understand that, yes, the Jews were the people God used. God, before making us all his people by baptism, he used Abraham. After Abraham then a nation. After a nation, they became the whole world. Stages have passed, stages, we have gone through a lot of stages. Even the right way they became the people of God by circumcision, we don't practice these things now again. Because the student know you don't need circumcision. But when you are baptized, so when you are baptized, you become a people of God, become Christ's follower by baptism. That's a way. So know that the Jews even were observing this, and that's why. And the Christians took up the need for us also to be baptized as well. Remember, the Jews also had that, Jerusalem, they should always worship. So even the yearly going home, those who are even far away, we go home yearly and all that, to go and offer this and observe this. And I think that's why even the Sabbath was sometimes moved to the first day. But are we asking ourselves, do you also go to Jerusalem to worship only there? Are we going to Jerusalem to worship there and observe these things over there? Meanwhile, Jesus Christ says a time is coming. It's not about place, it's not about where, but we shall worship in spirit and in truth. So don't get confused that if I worship on Sunday, I am wrong. Is God going to refuse your prayer when you prayerfully dedicate your Sundays truly to Him? Is God going to refuse your prayer? Every day the Catholic Church prays, celebrates. What about that? So if it's Sabbath day, Saturdays, church, every day we serve the Lord. Except when we say that Namado say there too much fish spoil the soup, then we might say that too much prayer will spoil we worshiping God. But it doesn't happen there, literally. So don't get confused. Don't get disturbed. Jesus Christ, the one we are following, the one who leads us, the Father says that He is the Lord of the Sabbath. And He resurrected on His day, the day of the Lord. So Christians, we have our Sabbath where we worship Him on the days of the Lord. Those who are Saturdays, remember the days were assigned by we men. But God said that in the 7th day. But then later we assign this day. It's not about time. Always remember what John chapter 4 verse 16 says. It's not going to be about time. It's not going to be about place. But we can worship in spirit and in truth. In spirit, who listens and who is spirit will hear our prayer when we observe the Sabbath. Make sure that you attend the days where we ought to celebrate. The great days of Saturday and Sundays, you need to attend. Those who are under your care, take them to church. Don't allow them to sit aloof in the house, breaking the commandment. I pray that the Lord Himself will always touch us, use us, fill us, so that as we continue to always know Him better, we shall always worship Him in spirit and in truth. Keep that in mind. New things Christ is doing. He comes to fulfill. He fulfills that to make us understand that the Sabbath was about the rest for man. The Sabbath was setting free slaves, by even the Israelites themselves were slaves. So it's commemorate the Passover when they were set free. A day where we need to also honor God and keep Him holy by also worshiping Him. And if we keep any day as such where we can worship, there's no harm, there's no danger in there. But also because Christ is resurrected, we become Christians because Christ suffered, died, and resurrected. That's the very principle of Christianity. And it says that go and baptize in the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Matthew chapter 28. And that is why, for this reason, and for this very reason, why we are Christians. So if the person whom we are following, who leads us to the Father, he says, I am the way, the truth, and life, even didn't so much pay attention to the Sabbath as the days to be worshipped, but says that we shall worship in spirit and truth, we don't break the commandment when we worship on Sundays. There were some days even the Israelites, the Jews, would even celebrate the Sabbath apart from the Saturdays some are talking about. We are Christians, we are not Jews. Because we are Christians, the New Testament we have. But the Jews do not even have the New Testament to understand that or to follow that, to accept that Jesus Christ didn't obey the Sabbath. For him, they saw him as a threat. And these are the reason why even he was crucified, because they saw that he was not observing the Sabbath laws. The Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. And we have the power over everything. Remember Genesis chapter, always remember 1 verse 20 is going that God created us, giving us the power and the grace to have control, to have dominion. So don't let days, don't let moments, don't let periods control you, other than you yourself controlling the days. I pray the Lord always be with you. Let's keep the days of the Lord holy. Beloved, it's now unfortunate that people now want to open their shops, stores on Sundays, sell small and come to work. Beloved, the Lord who cares for the ants will care for you when you close up your store and you come on the day of the Lord and worship him. Being Sunday, being the days given to him, is very important. I encourage you, let's always observe the masses we attend early in the morning. I believe, and I've said one thing, wherever I stand to pray, to preach, revival crusades, I said those early people who were always going to church in the morning, in the evening, every day, they lived long. They didn't die early. They lived long. That thing that we shall leave for another discussion someday. So when you worship on Sunday, my dear brother, my dear sister, there's no harm. Let those who speak with all other things have whatever they have. Because the Lord's day that we are worshiping. But he says we shall worship in spirit and in truth. And the Sabbath was made for us and not man for the Sabbath. And God said we have power and dominion over everything. Use that power. Exercise that power. Don't let this movement control you. Paul says that you are making me work in vain. Why do you stick? There are times in maybe I will share this in when you read verse 13 going in, it says that your festive days, your days of gathering, even the the Lord, it doesn't please me anymore. What about that one too? So we shouldn't only cling to one aspect, but let's go deeper into what others says. Beloved, when you close your stores on Sunday, the Lord will care for you. A woman who was all the time going to church Sundays without even selling, but began loving serving on Sundays, because opening stores on Sunday, because his client delayed coming on Saturday or day after to receive his goods, came and then people came to buy. So he felt that every Sunday is good at opening store. One day he opened on Sunday and he been involved in a great accident that destroyed almost his store and even her own legs. He gives glory to God that he didn't die. But from that moment he said that yes, Sunday is holy and I observe it as such. Let's use these days to glorify God. May God keep you, strengthen you. Observe the days of the Lord holy. Remember to keep the holy day, the Lord's day holy. Pray, rest, and set free those who are under your care. God bless you today and always. Amen.